Good morning and welcome. Romeo Santiago here once again. So I want to take a bit of time and share with you all my personal journey and how I've witnessed and interacted with folks and what those interactions left me with. Most of the people in my life know I was a chef in my past, working in catering, restaurants, hotels, resorts. We all see that it's fun and exciting until we turn on a TV show like Hell's Kitchen. We hear Chef Ramsay yelling and degrading folks and blatantly disrespecting, and we think, I could never let someone talk to me like that. Yeah, it's not just TV. The pressure in the kitchen gets to folks, and it builds and it builds and it builds until we find ourselves being put down and disrespected on a regular basis. But I also found myself doing the same thing to the people around me. Once the kitchen was closed, the drinks started, and we would laugh and get drunk. I told myself all those excuses why it was okay for people to talk to me like that, or why it was okay for me to talk to others like that. And that was the norm, until I decided to transition. After I left the culinary industry, after about 10 years, I moved into HIV testing and counseling. I quickly saw a different style of communication, one filled with shame and secrecy. As I asked those questions about sexual health and about partners and sexual activity and sex in general, I came across a lot of folks who just couldn't bring themselves to be honest with what they were doing, because to admit certain parts of ourselves is probably the hardest thing to do. So I asked myself, would I admit to some stranger some of the aspects of sex I engage in? The answer was hell no. So it became learning how to accept and normalize what is sex. What is sex, and challenging the beliefs of those folks coming to get tested. This also meant that I had to face the fact that I was ashamed of those parts of myself. After a good 5 or so years, I decided to go to grad school and explore other directions for a career. I began my internship as a mental health therapist, and I quickly realized how easy it was for my clients to excuse their behaviors because they have a diagnosis. But it wasn't just a diagnosis for them. It was an identity. It was never, I have depression, I have anxiety, I have bipolar. It was always, I am this diagnosis. I am borderline. I am depression. Throughout this and reflecting on my own upbringing and traumas, I realized, shit, that's me. I've always been a victim of racial profiling. I have always been traumatized. I've always been anxious. I have been my circumstances. Well, how do you step out of that mindset of being your circumstances and into a mindset different? I did a lot of work with my clients, and in turn, a lot of work with reflecting on myself, to see myself as a whole person who has experienced situations versus having situations define me. It all began and ended with an internal dialogue and how much and how loud that take place. Being a mental health therapist was fun until I graduated grad school. And then I decided to explore assertive community treatment, or ACT. If you're not familiar with this, well, when the government decided to shut down the mental health hospitals, state-funded places for folks with severe and persistent mental illnesses, all those people essentially were thrown onto the streets with little or no support. So now that there are not many state hospitals, these folks have virtually nothing. So ACT teams are comprised of a therapist, psychiatrist, peer counselor, nurse, vocational counselor, and sometimes other supports to go out into the community, find these folks, provide them with services so that they can actually be as independent as possible. So I've worked with hundreds of clients and I loved this work. But it also taught me more about myself. These are folks who have severe mental health diagnoses, such as psychosis, psychotic disorders, severe borderline personality disorder, severe depression. The cool thing is that it didn't take long to realize that arguing about someone's reality won't do anyone a bit of good. Trying to convince a client who is not pregnant and who has never met the president and lives in a tent in the woods, convincing them that they do not have a romantic relationship with the President of the United States is useless. Instead, it was going along with it in an attempt to make them feel heard, validated, to gain trust, to be open to some of those changes, like going on medication, to be open to actually allowing people to help them. What I learned about myself is that no one has to see the world through my eyes, and I don't have to agree with someone else's viewpoints. What I have been searching for is someone who just says, yeah, I get it. And that fucking sucks. I was looking for empathy. But in order to receive empathy, I have to be empathetic to those around me. After a few years of being on an ACT team, I went into substance abuse as a substance abuse therapist. If you've ever had someone abusing substances in your life, you know it can be one of the most challenging and heartbreaking and maddening experiences. I've had many clients overdose. I've had many clients die. I've had many clients return multiple times through the program. I've seen lots of stuff. But again, it taught me more about myself. Most of the time, it's the shame and desire to lie to ourselves about the things we enjoy, the desires we have. Very similar to when I was doing work with HIV testing and counseling. Sex and drugs can also be one of the most fulfilling escapes in life. But it's also clinging to the idea that I once was in control, and if I can prove I can be in control again, all of this will be worth it. Substance abuse and domestic violence are very similar in this respect, because there is this focus on the past, and we tell ourselves, this time it'll be different. Throughout my time working in treatment, I was reminded of my own substance abuse and domestic violence history. Returning over and over to a relationship because there was a time when I felt like the most special person in the world. But that version of my former partner had long since gone. It's not until I accepted the reality that I was able to leave the relationship or put down the drugs. Throughout my career, communication has always played a part, a huge part, in being able to assist my clients and being able to overcome my own personal struggles. So I want to share a few tips with you as you navigate through this course. 1, be kind and forgiving to yourself. You of all people deserve it. Allow yourself to embrace the fact that you're not perfect and you have made mistakes. At the end of the day, that's what life is all about. Love yourself for your flaws. 2, don't rush the process. The more you pile onto your plate, the more overwhelming you'll be. If it takes you a week, a month, a year, a decade to get through this course, so be it. Accept that you are not someone else, because the person who makes it through these particular courses in just a couple of days is probably not putting in the work, or they're rushing it. If we rush to get to the end, we miss practicing the skills. We miss getting comfortable with the skills. We miss these opportunities. The third tip, growth means discomfort. In order for change to happen, you have to let go of the old. Think about your most prized possession in the world. How hard would it be for you to replace it with something more modern? So know the process will be hard and embrace it. 4, remember tip number 1. None of this is easy. It's simple, but it's not easy. So be kind with the one who matters the most. You. Number 5, you paid for the course. You are taking the course. Do not look at it from the perspective that your partner should do these things. Only the perspective that these are things I am trying, not anyone else. 6, self-care and rewards. Reward yourself and celebrate every small achievement. Celebrate finishing each video. Celebrate learning the skill. Celebrate practicing. Celebrate restructuring your week. Celebrate, celebrate, celebrate. Reward, reward, reward. Because that's how you're going to get through this. So, I hope these tips were helpful. I hope you gained something out of this particular video. That being said, we do have to pause, but I hope you have a wonderful, amazing rest of this beautiful day, and I will see you soon.